Chapter 4. The First Confrontation. The hand moved from the giant chair and tapped a button. "Thank you, Reginald. See what damage you can do until the time gets here." The chair turned around to reveal the clone. A man came to the chair. "Sir, the tracking system is activated. It indicates that they are heading for Rochester." The clone looked toward the man. "Which Rochester? There's a good amount of Rochesters in this country, let alone the world, so if you don't mind me asking, which one is it?" "New York, sir! Rochester, New York, sir!" responded the man. "Well then, let's get ready." "For what?" "For part one of my plan." A car pulled up at the Eastman Hotel in Rochester, New York, and out stepped the spies and Moneypenny. Serena was waiting at the door of the hotel. "Would one of you mind explaining yourselves? Why are we in one of the most nicest places in the country, and yet MI6 calls this an emergency?" "There's a double of Daniel out on the loose, and he's highly dangerous. Also, his license has been revoked until further notice. So, if you wouldn't mind holding on to this for me." Bond reached into his coat jacket and pulled out a spare Walther PPK and gave it to 00 Saletti. "James!" everybody shouted. "Look, when you're with me, the rules tend to change rather quickly. Now, if you don't mind, I think we should get to our rooms." The afternoon transferred into evening. There was a high-scale restaurant called the State Street Dining Room. All four people reconvened in the restaurant. Bond and Daniel were dressed in their tuxes, and Serena and Moneypenny were dressed in evening dresses. When the four of them entered, the host guided them to a private room. When the host opened the door to the room, there sat a scary resemblance to the junior spy. He sat in a chair at the head of the table, in a tux. He had a red bow tie, red cummerbund, and red shoes. On the sides of the table were people. One side had a woman and a man, and on the other side another woman. The double quickly rose from his chair. "What a treat! I am standing in the same room as one of the greatest spy duos," wait for it, steady, dramatic pause, "in the world." "It's David, right?" questioned Daniel as he slowly extended his hand. "Indeed it is, and may I say the likeness is remarkable. And you, sir, please let me say it, you must be Bond, James Bond." James sternly and annoyingly smirked. "And such lovely ladies, I must add. You must be the legendary Miss Moneypenny. However, I'm not familiar with your name, madam." "My name is Serena." "Serena, such a beautiful name for such a beautiful woman." David took Serena's hand and kissed it. "Now may I introduce my other guests? You may be familiar with the Miss Sylvia Sparkles, the talented jewel enthusiast. And this is my other guest, Miss Alicia Santiago. Also, this is my butler, Reginald." Reginald got up and bowed. Daniel took James aside. "I thought Sylvia was in prison." "She was," James answered. "Lovely to see you again, James. I've told my sister here all about you and your little friend," Sylvia said as Daniel looked over with an annoyed look on his face. Bond did the same thing. "Something wrong, gentlemen?" David questioned. Bond and 00 Saletti shook their heads. "Well then, please, sit." The four colleagues from MI6 walked closer to the table and sat down. Moneypenny and Serena placed their two purses on the table. "So tell us, David, what have you done with yourself ever since the end of the 00 project?" "Ah, is that why you tracked me down? M still likes to keep tabs on his lost people, Well, since the project ended, I decided to let myself enjoy life. I became an investor, acquiring many plentiful amounts of cash, and because I wanted to enjoy life, I traveled the world, visiting all these monuments and statues devoted to some of my greatest idols. In fact, I've gotten people to join me. I have quite a group of roadies, if you know what I mean. Many of them work for me. Here, have a look." He handed 00 Saletti a list of people that included names and addresses. He held it close to his face and then gave it back. "And Sylvia, how did you escape?" Bond asked. "James, I can't tell you all my secrets, can I? You never did tell me how you won that baccarat game, did you?" Sparkles replied. "Where did you meet Miss Santiago, David?" Daniel asked. "In España, Spain. She seemed lonely, and I asked if she wanted to accompany me on my adventures. She's been my traveling partner ever since." David looked over at a clock on the wall. Well, would you look at the time? I don't believe it. I am afraid we will have to continue this another time. I do thank you all for joining me and for coming. Bond, Double Lady, Serena, and Moneypenny got up and left. David and his crew were not far behind. David stopped Reginald on the way out. I'll be coming back late tonight. Take the spies and the ladies to their hotel and tell me if, Understood, sir. David stuck out his hands to each of the guests and shook their hands. When Moneypenny came to him, he squeezed her hand very hard. Quite a grip you have there, Mr. David. David smiled and tilted his head. Reginald, along with the spies and the ladies, continued out. David snuck around the back and got into his own car, his own private car, and proceeded to follow the spies.